Hello, this is Alexander O'Connor. This is my 8th grade podcast assignment. Hello everyone, and welcome to History in Philly. Today, we will talk about how the Jewish population impacted Philadelphia. They created many institutions for learning, healthcare, and other nonprofit organizations. They are known to be good in the economic field, and they created many landmarks still here today that we can enjoy. So sit back, relax, and enjoy. Let's begin with a little background history. Jewish people came a few years before William Penn founded Pennsylvania. They originally came to the Delaware Valley from New Amsterdam, where they came to trade as early as the 1650s. New Amsterdam, now known as New York, was named New Amsterdam because Amsterdam was invaded by the ambitious fighting Portuguese. They were then practically forced to leave because the New Amsterdam folk thought that Jews were a threat. This was solely because of their ignorance. When they first arrived in Philadelphia, the first arrivals, Nathan and his brother Isaac Levy, were then joined by their cousins David, Franks, and Moses. Together, David and Nathan created a triumphant commercial business for exporting and importing various things. Jewish people permanently settled in 1737 as merchants and tradesmen. In the 1750s, there were only about 250 Jews in Philadelphia. Communal life began when Nathan Levy made a grant of ground from Spruce Street between 8th and 9th Streets. There, Mikveh Israel congregation was established in 1740. It was the first synagogue in Philadelphia and in the U.S. During 1765 through 1783, the Jews found a way to help their community during the time of the Revolutionary period in America. They were activists in supplying American troops, bakers, and military figures with resources. After the British gained control of multiple cities in 1778, Philadelphia became a safe haven for refugees. Jonas Phillips, an advocate for the Constitutional Convention, made a successful effort to change the Constitution for anyone that wanted to be an office holder in Congress that was a man. It stated that you had to swear by the New and Old Testament. But Jewish people were naturally excluded from this because they value only the Old Testament. In 1790, it was changed so that any Jewish man could run for office and hold office in Congress. The early 19th century was the time that Jewish people in Philly started creating many services and organizations. Some felt they did not belong to the Sephardi services that Mikveh Israel had and made their own congregation under the name German Hebrew Society. Today, it is called Rodeph Shalom. This made Philadelphia the first city to have more than one congregation in America. A historical figure named Rebecca Gratz and women from Mikveh Israel established the Female Hebrew Benevolent Society. It was the first Jewish charitable society organization in the U.S., which is still active today. Both congregations started to create a line of charitable societies. Rebecca Gratz also established the Hebrew Sunday School Society along with other women. In the 1840s through the 1850s, 5 more congregations were established: Beth Zion, Beth Israel, Knesset Israel, Ben Israel, which was disbanded, Beth El Emeth, also disbanded, and Edith Jeshurun. During the 19th century, Isaac Leeser became the leader of Mikveh Israel. He created the American Jewish Publication Society and then opened the first Jewish Theological Seminary in the U.S., known as Maimonides College, which is not in Philadelphia today, sadly. Besides what Jewish people could accomplish, it was also because Philadelphia was the center for cultural and intellectual advancement at that time. Under the endorsement of Hyman Gratz, Gratz College was the first Jewish teaching college in the U.S. Dropsy College, now known as the Center for Advanced Judaic Studies, is the first postgraduate university for Jewish learning around the world, which was made in Philadelphia. It is part of the University of Pennsylvania that gives guidance to help participants to learn about Judaic life and culture through witnessing different interactions between ethnic and religious groups. Sabato, a Philadelphia-born Jew, made the famous Jewish Theological Seminary in New York. By the end of the 19th century, there was a wave of immigration in Philadelphia from Central and Eastern Europe. This created a concern by Philadelphia. By 1880, there was 12,000 Jewish people in Philadelphia. By 1915, there was 200 Jewish people. From the immigration, and a lot were Ukrainian. After World War I, Jews in Port Richmond, Northern Liberties, and South Street moved to South Philadelphia, Strawberry Mansion, and West Philadelphia. The education after the war was hugely community-sponsored. After 1919, there were more than 100 Orthodox congregations, which were small. There were 30 conservative and 2 Reform. There were very few English Orthodox congregations, however. They did not incorporate the language in Philadelphia until the late 1930s. Before that, they had only Hebrew and Yiddish. During World War II, when the economic depression was blamed on the Jews, the Philadelphia Jews became more as a whole and coalesced. In 1937, the first Allied Jewish Appeal Campaign for Germanic Jews donated 9,000 donors and raised $258,000. In 1939, a total of a whopping almost $1 million for organ donations were raised for low-income Jews. World War II drove the increase of fundraising hosted by Jews, and they created the Jewish Communities Relations Council. After World War II, there was a community change. The Jewish communal life was centered around their traditionalism. Different from American cities, close to half the Jews lived in Philadelphia after the war. A lot moved to Mount Airy, Overbrook, and especially the Northeast and Lower Merion. South Philadelphia Jews and Strawberry Mansion population declined because of racial conflict, sadly. The education moved from communal funding to the congregations. So that means that instead of having schools. They just had Jewish kids learn in their own synagogues. The Gratz College moved to Elkins Park, Northeast. In the 1970s and 80s, there was a greater population in Center City, Greater Northeast, Old York Road Suburban, Mount Airy, Winfield. Growing population in Norristown and Levittown was also there. There were 50 congregations that were conservative, 45 Orthodox, and 15 Reform. However, from there, most of Philadelphia was dominated by the conservative option in Judaism. Jewish people were very successful in their jobs and were activists in the boards of learning and cultural institutions. An example of Jewish prestigiousness of leadership was Martin Myers, who was named president of the University of Pennsylvania, the Ivy League college. Still, they were neglected upon country clubs and parts of Philly that represented the remnants of old quote-unquote society. Local Holocaust survivors established the first outdoor public memorials in the United States. In the 1990s until now, there have been several things that are credited to the Jewish population. Judith OConnor, a Jewish woman, was the first woman to be head of an Ivy League college, the University of Pennsylvania. She was also proactive for the disabled and low-income people. She marched for church and state separation activists. She was a church and state activist and served as a legal director for the Pennsylvania American Civil Liberties Union from 1983 through 2004. Today, there are several things you can see and learn about. Congregation Mikveh Israel is not only a synagogue, but also a historic landmark that you can visit. Currently, the Female Hebrew Benevolent Society hosts to help for the frail elderly women, has a pharmacy, and has several camp scholarship programs. The American Jewish Publication Society has many important books about Judaism, including Torahs and history, classic literature, types of Judaism, and the arts. You can also read the Jewish Exponent if you get the chance. The award-winning newspaper has been around since 1887. This year is a special year because it is celebrating its 130th birthday. Temple Rodeph Shalom, besides being a temple, also is a daycare center, has a program to support gun control, refugee resettlement in Philadelphia, and has connections to child care centers. JTS, or the Jewish Theological Seminary, is located on Broadway, where it is a college solely based on Judaic studies, nothing else. It has the largest faculty in America solely for Jewish studies. You can also visit some very famous Jewish delis, such as the famous 4th Street Deli or Cochise, which is spelled Kochis. They serve very large and delicious portions of kugel, meats, and other Jewish prized foods. Yum! Thank you for tuning in to History in Philly today. This podcast was sponsored today by Mr. Rutland's Help Foundation. If you do something wrong, don't be sorry, be correct. Have a wonderful day. Thank you for listening to my podcast by Alexander O'Connor for my 8th grade graduation podcast project.